Welcome to today's podcast interview. I brought on Laura Charelle. Laura, welcome.
Thank you.
Laura and I we connected a couple years ago doing an online program, and I reached out to her specifically for this episode for something I was going through. But if you want to give a little background, Laura, where do you live and what do you do?
So I currently live in San Diego, and I'm the founder of Balanced Bombshells, which is a women's health organization teaching women how to naturally balance their hormones through cycle syncing and other natural holistic tips, for the women who might not want to be on the birth control pill or the IUD. It's been fun just helping women connect to their bodies in a new way and really see their cycle as something positive versus negative.
And I want to give the men a heads up. Yes, we're going to be talking a lot about hormones and female stuff, but this will be very useful for men so they can understand more and to be supportive for their partner when we're going through things.
Yes.
But why I reached out to Laura, and the big thing is I wanted to bring this specific subject to light because I feel like some women may be suffering in silence. And what we're talking about is, yes, there's PMS, but there's also PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And the best way I can describe that is literally PMS on steroids. And so I've, not to get too personal, but I've always had some crazy hormones. I haven't been on the birth control pill in years because I didn't like foreign things coming in and out of my body. So I wanted my body to balance on its own. But the last few cycles, I've had some bad PMDD. And sometimes when it's in the moment, when, you're feeling the depression and you don't have excitement and you're eating the food, so then it's even a worse cycle. I don't always know it when I'm in it, but it lasts 3 days. And then I'm like, oh, damn, that was just hormones. So maybe can you give a little background how you got started doing this? And then let's talk about PMS and PMDD.
Yeah, so I absolutely struggle with PMDD. I was one of the 5% of women like you who struggled to that severity. So to give a little bit of background too, and even the men listening who might appreciate this with their ladies or the women in their life, 90% of women in their childbearing years struggle with some form of PMS. So some others might not feel it the way that you and I would with PMDD. So women truly get PMS, and I think men understand it as well. They know when we're moody, they know when we're a little bit more sensitive, our periods are coming, and it's not something to especially wish away. It's just finding a different way to embrace those shifts. So I really got started in hormones because PMDD was really interrupting my life. Same with you, I was having a 2 to 3 day period every single month right before my period started where I emotionally just felt really low. I was calling out of work, so I wasn't able to really be productive and efficient in my job. And I think it was, in terms of attendance, I think was becoming a problem. My relationship was suffering food-wise. I had all the food cravings as well. And then, it really offsets your fitness efforts and you trying to eat well. And it was just throwing off everything for the month ahead, essentially. So I really just started diving into hormones. And that's when I found cycle syncing, where, for those who don't know what that is, it's when you partner your food, your fitness, your work, and your relationships to where you're at in your cycle. And it actually creates a lot of predictable patterns within your thoughts, within your body, and you're able to then work backwards to balance your hormones. So I no longer have PMDD. I no longer have PMS. And I feel like if I'm a girl who can nix that after spending a decade struggling with it, I think anybody can. So I was just so excited to have this conversation with you too, and just kind of shine light on how we can move away from it and help women really support their body best all month long and not fall into these pitfalls.
And I think most importantly, naturally. So when I was online going through this, WebMD, but I was Googling what are some natural remedies to help me with this? Because no, I don't want to get on the pill and I don't want to take estrogen and I don't want to do those things. And some of the top things were things we should be doing: yoga, meditation, eating well, getting exercise. And I was like, well, I'm doing most of those. So that's why I was like, Laura can help me. Laura does this. And I mean, we spoke about this briefly before, but you've talked all about the cycle syncing and understanding your patterns and your moods and when you're most likely to be really creative and kick ass at work, and when you need to like back off and maybe not be social. And I'll be frank, like I'm a woman and I still didn't understand the 4 cycles. So maybe can we give like a super brief, what are the 4 cycles? How long do they last?
Yeah. Yep. So we have 4 phases that our bodies shift throughout the month. And so for the men listening too, they might appreciate this and like the difference between our body and a man's body. And it really comes down to our hormone structure. So a man's body, their hormones reset at the end of 24 hours. So every single man at the end of 24 hours, his hormones have reset. For us, for ladies, it takes an entire monthly cycle for our hormones to reset. So if you've ever tried to lose weight with a man, you might notice that your efforts are slower and he reaches his goals faster. And it's because your hormones are taking a much longer time to reset. So then like this also, I think, kind of debunks men wanting to know what's going on with women, or like, oh, they're just so different. They drastically change. You know, one feels this way, but another feels this way. It's because each of our cycles is a different length. So mine is like 29 to 31 days. Some women might be 33 days. The average cycle for a woman is anywhere between 21 and 35 days. So each one of us is going to be experiencing these 4 phases at a different wavelength, essentially. So to just do like a overview of the phases, the day our cycle starts is the day we get our period. So when you get your period, that's day 1 of your cycle, and that's your menstrual phase, which I think most women know. Most women know the menstrual phase. So that leads into the follicular phase. So after your period ends, which your menstrual phase can last between 3 to 7 days, depending on the woman. And then in our follicular phase, it's the phase right after the menstrual phase ends, and that can last from 7 to 10 days. From there, we switch into ovulation. So that lasts for about 3 to 5 days. And I think most women will know of ovulation, and most men will if the couple is trying to get pregnant, because that's a time of the month that women can get pregnant. So that ovulation period can last between 3 to 5 days. And then the last phase from ovulation, we switch into luteal, which is 10 to 14 days. And I like to break that up into essentially like 2 different weeks. So like the first week, you're kind of coming down from ovulation, so your energy might be higher. But then that second week of luteal is when most women are experiencing PMS. So that's the premenstrual week. And then we start again once we have our period.
That was kind of a lot. But how long did it take you to journal and understand your patterns and behaviors so you could understand when you had to back off and when you could go full on?
Mm-hmm. It took me quite a bit because my cycle was actually off. So I think it would be easier for someone who was ovulating correctly. So I actually didn't know my cycle was off until I started to track it. So even just getting started in cycle syncing showed me very clearly where I was off in my cycle and why, one of the reasons why I was starting to have these symptoms at a more overwhelming rate. So my cycle was 40 to 43 days, which is considered abnormal. So anything over 35 days or anything less than 21 is considered abnormal. So because my period was delayed, my ovulation was off. So I noticed once I started tuning into the phases and really knowing how I was supposed to feel in each phase, I could feel my body essentially click into the phase, but it felt like a few days late. Like I always felt like, oh, I'm supposed to be here, but I wouldn't fully get there until like 3 to 4 days later, which would make sense if my period was then delayed. So I think for someone who already has like a regulated cycle could probably feel it and be more in tune with it than I could have been, because like if you're ovulating correctly, your period's coming at the predictable time. That makes it so much easier to pay attention to. But most women who come to me usually have period problems. So it can take, depending on the woman, it can take like 2 to 3 cycles to really understand it. For me, it took about a little over 6 months for me to truly understand my thoughts, patterns, my feelings. But I also didn't have anyone to explain it to me. So it was just like, it takes longer. So,
And then you've also shared with me foods and different things you found that really work for you. So what are those?
You mean in terms of like PMS?
Well, and maybe even throughout the month. But I know, for me, it's a vicious cycle. So when I'm craving the salt, but I'm craving the sweet, I'm eating a bag of chips, then I'm eating the chocolate, and then I break out. And then, so it's like, okay, how do I stop this?
Yes. And I think so what helped me was understanding food cravings and where they were coming from. So I did a lot of research on what the different food cravings were and what my body was essentially asking for. So a craving doesn't just come up. It's not like you just want that chocolate or you want that salt. That it's coming from somewhere and your body's actually asking for very specific nutrients. So that helped me a lot be able to get over the craving, but then also give my body exactly what it was asking for. So there are 4 food cravings that I think every woman should know. And I have a blog post if anyone wants to read more about this up on my website, but I can give a debrief here. So if you're craving sugar, and if you want to write this down, you might appreciate this.
I am.
Sugar, and this helped. I mean, I used to eat so much sugar. Like, it is nauseating how much sugar I ate. So sugar is essentially an overgrowth of bad bacteria in your stomach. So the sugar cravings and that need that you feel in the back of your head, or that intense desire that you're having for sugar, is the bad bacteria in your stomach asking to be fed. So I really thought of it like, okay, I'm having these cravings because I have an overgrowth right now of bad bacteria in my stomach. So if I continue to eat sugar, that's going to continue to feed it, and I'm going to keep having this problem. So I think most people really struggle with this, and I totally get it. I had to dig real deep to pull myself off of it. And what I started doing was, once you kill off that sugar, so you kill it off by not eating sugar. And then when you kill it off, essentially, you're then not going to get those cravings. Or if you do, it's completely different. And if you were to have like a candy bar after you get rid of the bad bacteria, you're probably like, to me, it tastes different now. And I eat it, I'm like, I can't even eat this. Like, it's too sweet. And you can just tell it's fake sugar. Like, you can just tell. So I started, as I was transitioning away from sugar, I would eat fruit. So like, fruit became like a sweet treat for me instead of a cookie. So I was still getting something sweet. And then I would sweeten things with stevia, which is an all-natural sweetener that doesn't have a hit to your insulin levels, and it's not going to be feeding the bad bacteria. So those are 2 things that helped me switch off the sugar, where I then didn't crave it and I didn't need it. And like, I think that greatly can improve your PMDD or PMS.
Yeah.
So then chocolate cravings, I think every woman knows this one. And what I love about chocolate is we really can eat it. It's just we have to be mindful of what we're consuming. So chocolate cravings are your body asking for more magnesium. And so we really gravitate towards this, especially like before and during our period, because it has a very calming effect on our body, because that's the magnesium from it. So I really like to tell women, like, absolutely eat chocolate, but just be mindful of what type of chocolate. So I really taught myself to enjoy very dark chocolate because it has less sugar. And then I would buy more of like the natural bars that had much fewer ingredients. So then it was, those bars have more fiber and more protein in it. So then you're not having that sugar crash that could essentially lead into that low level thinking, that exhaustion, that brain fog. Or I'd make like a cacao smoothie. So I'd buy the cacao powder and just put it in like a smoothie, maybe put like a little banana in there. And then it made me feel like I was having like chocolate ice cream or chocolate pudding or something. And so I absolutely encourage women to eat chocolate and not feel like we don't have to have that, because it's filled with a lot of good things that our body needs. It's just making sure we're not essentially having as much sugar with it. So that's craving number 2. So hopefully these are helping you so far, because I know you mentioned like the chocolate and the sugar and all of that stuff.
Well, it makes total sense, because the sugar, it's kind of like this demon inside of me, and it just wants to be fed. So if I starve it off, then
you won't get those cravings.
Oh, that sounds heavenly.
Yeah. And you will, it's so freeing, because I used to eat sugar breakfast, morning, or like lunch, dinner, afternoon snack. Like, sugar was always there. I always had dessert. And then I was like, oh, I can now see how my habits were contributing to my emotional state, essentially. And then knowing that I was a little bit more hormonally sensitive, of course I would then fall into PMDD. So anytime you then think of sugar, yeah, think of, okay, I'm not going to eat this because I'm going to starve off that bad bacteria.
Well, and then, wait, I imagine we should touch on alcohol with all of this as well.
Yes. So I did have to cut alcohol too as I was working on my gut health. So I always encourage women to, be mindful of alcohol. It's not saying you can't have it. It's just recognizing that alcohol also does turn to sugar in our body. So that's wine, that's cocktails, that's beer. It really does turn into sugar. So I teach women to drink kombucha, which is a probiotic fermented tea. And I actually put it in a wine glass or a champagne glass. So it makes it feel like I'm having like a fruity champagne or, indulging in a little cocktail. But the probiotic is feeding the good bacteria in your stomach, which you want to promote more good bacteria versus bad.
Yeah, I have kombucha daily and I call it millennial juice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. We are like totally riding that kombucha train.
Yeah. Okay, so then what's the third craving?
The third craving is if you have salt. So if you're really craving salt, your body's asking for more omega-3s. So for this, like you can find omega-3s in walnuts, chia seeds, avocado. So what I would do is I really like that salt craving. Sometimes with the salt, you really want like a crunchy food. So like a potato chip, I would always find myself craving. So I would make guacamole and I would add Himalayan sea salt so that I'm getting the salt, but then the avocado is going to give me the omega-3s. And then I would pair it with like carrots or cucumbers. So I would be getting that crunch and I would getting that salt, but then I wasn't derailing my food habits essentially. Or I would make a chia walnut pudding. So I would, make chia pudding and I put walnuts on top with a little like coconut flakes and cinnamon. And then, those omega-3s essentially helping satisfy that salt craving. And then the last one is carbs. So women might find that they are craving carbohydrates right before and during their period. And carbs are your body asking for more vitamin Bs. So certainly have like a complex carb if that's something that you're craving, or finding other ways to get vitamin B in your diet, which can come from meat sources. So like grass-fed beef is high in them, chicken, turkey, lentils have it, and finding sources like that, like seafood as well, will give you some of those vitamin B. So if you're like, okay, I'm really craving carbs, pair like a complex carb, maybe like a sweet potato or a rice with some sort of protein that will give your body those vitamin Bs.
And so then how long have you been doing this whole Balanced Bombshell?
I started Balanced Bombshells about 2.5 years ago. So it's been about 2.5 years working with women to do hormones and teaching them how to cycle sync and pair all of their food and stuff to their cycle. So it's been so amazing to watch it like grow. And you and I met like right before I had started it. I was like trying to learn how the whole online business thing went. And that was like right when I realized I wanted to teach women's health.
So can you, like, maybe what are some top takeaways that you remember the old you and the now the balanced, feeling good, not destructive hormonal you?
Yes. I kept a cycle sync journal. So I would just take a journal wherever I went and I started documenting what foods I was eating, how I felt afterwards, what my sleep was like, what my exercise habit was like. And then that really helped give me a good analysis after a cycle or two of picking up patterns within my own self. It actually helped me backtrack into finding foods that I was sensitive to. So I started noticing like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit bloated before my period's coming. And then I was like, well, I'm only eating sweet potato during that time because it's one of those foods that can essentially like help detox your liver and it can help, with hormone balance. And then I was like, oh, my body doesn't like starches and it was causing my body to bloat. And so I was like, well, I don't want to feel bloated. Like I'm just going to ditch the sweet potato and use it as a moderate treat versus like an everyday thing during that phase. And then emotionally, I had to get really comfortable with slowing down at the times of the month where we're naturally going to have lower energy. I noticed what I was doing was our energy peaks at ovulation. And then it starts to decline as we're getting our period. So like as it peaks during ovulation, we're more charismatic, we're more outgoing, we're more extroverted. We want to be around people. And then I think every woman can relate to like as she's shifting to get her period, she just wants to turn inward. She wants to shut off from the world. She wants to just still do her stuff, but like not converse. And I used to hold it over my head, and this might help anyone that's listening. I had to really give myself permission to slow down and not feel like I needed to be extroverted. I think we live in a world where we feel like we constantly need to be plugged in. We constantly need to have our schedules jam-packed with everything. And I really gave myself permission to not have to do that if I didn't want to. And that took a huge mental burden off my shoulders. And that has been one of the biggest freeing differences that I've seen from before and after.
Well, and I think and I noticed that too, I think women, it's like, oh, when you just want to chill and hang out, maybe watch a movie, wear sweatpants, like that's okay. And it's creating boundaries, and it's okay to take those couple chill nights.
Yes. Where I think most of us feel bad about it. Like we feel like, well, no, I'm supposed to be out doing stuff, or I'm supposed to be doing that. And it's like, no, you're supposed to relax right now. And so that helped me really partner my activities throughout the month of like, okay, I'm going to go to parties. I'm going to be extroverted over here, but here I'm going to like say no to things. And like, I would tell my fiance, like, hey, if you want a guys night, like, please go do it. Like, I'm just going to sit and do like a bath and a meditation and just do me, and we don't need to talk, and it's cool, which he appreciated.
For some women that are listening and thinking, oh my gosh, this just sounds daunting, then I'm going to have to journal and log. And how much time did you spend a day?
I wouldn't say too much. So every time I ate, I would just quickly for 5 minutes journal what I had done. And that's just something that worked for me. Like women don't feel like they have to. It was just something that I used to get to know my patterns. I felt like, if you don't write it down, you don't always remember. So maybe like 5 minutes after each meal or snack. So that was maybe like half an hour a day. And I think once you get into it, you become more motivated in it, and you realize like, oh my God, I'm learning so much about myself here. So you don't really think about how much time, like you might actually start naturally carving time into your day to do it. So I totally understand it can feel daunting, but I think the more you start learning about yourself, you're going to start peeling away like layer after layer, and you're just going to get to know yourself on a whole new level. And just, I think that will inspire you to want to keep going and learn even more.
Right. Well, and especially for those that have the severe PMS or PMDD, it's like, all right, so how long do you want to continue this where you could just sit back and take some time, do the work, and change your life, literally?
Yeah, exactly. Because it is, and I'm hoping that you're going to go through this process too, so that you can just be like, okay, I realized that it was a problem, and I was motivated within myself to fix it. And it really, when you can shed that PMS, when you can shed that PMDD, that's not us living as our best self. And like, if you think of how many days or how many weeks, even after that 3-day period that you're essentially coming back to yourself and getting over whatever damage you had done during that time, that turns into like a week or two every single month that you're struggling. And if you think about it, we menstruate for about 40 years. So that's 50% of your time in 40 years. And just imagine what you can do within your business, within yourself, within your life, if you didn't have this weight weighing you down. And I think that motivated me certainly to keep moving and to want to just be better for myself so that I could actually fulfill what I wanted to achieve in life. Like I felt like it was holding me back in so many areas of my life.
Yes. Well, I definitely hope this sheds light for others, but I've already started, but I'm going to continue on.
Yeah. And just chip away slowly. Like if you're noticing overwhelm, like don't put that pressure on yourself to have to figure it out. Like it took me, because I had no one else telling me, and I was testing out so many different things. It took me like 18 months to really get a hold on it. But that's also because I was starting to do this as a business, and I was testing a ton of shit. So if you're then can learn at least from the stuff, well, the areas where I went wrong, I've noticed women be able to figure it out in like 2 to 3 cycles. So that's 2 to 3 months versus my 18 months.
That's huge. Yeah. So this
Yeah.
whole thing is, it's like how to ditch PMS forever. You have the key to it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I would love to wrap up this interview with a few rapid fire questions.
Okay. Shoot.
The first one, and doesn't have to do with this topic at all, but what advice would you give your younger self?
Tune in, like just tune into your own emotions, to your own feelings, and allow that to guide you towards your next step. I think my mind got too much in the analytical, logical side, and I downplayed what my heart truly wanted.
Intuition, that's huge.
Yeah, which I know you love. You can appreciate that.
Yes. What is a quote or motto that you live by?
Oh, that's a good one. I really like Nike's, like, just do it. Like, we can trip ourselves up when we have that fear and that doubt. And like those 3 words always come back to me of like, just do it. And then I'm able to like turn off that fear and just do something that might be freaking me out, or I don't know how it'll work out, and it helps me move forward.
So kind of like Mel Robbins' 5-second rule, you stop the hesitation, that just do it clicks and you go.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. We all need something like that.
Yeah.
What is a book that you're currently reading or highly recommend?
The book I'm currently reading, which I don't know if you've heard of, is Light is the New Black.
Rebecca Campbell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So it's all about, finding your light. How can you like shine it through? And I just really, for whatever, gravitate towards it. I love Hay House. So it was so fun to be able to like see this new book. I don't know how old it is, but I've enjoyed it so far.
Is it the pink cover?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I read that a couple years ago, but I agree. And that's one you can totally go back to.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Final question. If there was one major takeaway you want women or men to have gotten from this topic, what is it?
To not downplay a woman's emotions. I think that in our society, we are, essentially being made to feel bad about our feelings, and we then displace them because we don't want to be a burden to others, or we don't want to be seen as bitchy or moody, or all of these negative things that men and women place on our shoulders. And it's like, that's one of the reasons why we're so irritable, is because all month long we're stuffing down what we really want to say. So if there's anything that you can get out of this or be inspired, is don't apologize for your emotions, and just find a way to articulate them all month long and to ask for what you need. Because then you're not going to be having those irritable, frustrated times that it might bubble up as a little bit more angry and bitchy that we might want to be.
Well, I don't want women, because I know some women do this, right? They get into the victim mode of PMS and they become real needy and gross. That is not what this is about at all. This is about stepping into taking responsibility, but learning how to make it a much different experience.
Right. So I knew it was an issue in my life when my fiance, before we were engaged, had moved in together. And I remember thinking, if this relationship is going to work, I cannot project and blame shit on him, because he's not the problem here. It is me. And so I needed to really own how I was showing up, how my energy was, how I was projecting my internal feelings onto him. And I was like, I need to take this as an opportunity to dive into myself and really own my shit and clean up my side of the street. And like, it, for our relationship, was life-changing, but more life-changing for the relationship that I had with myself. I was really able to dive deeper into what might be bothering me, what I truly wanted in life, instead of stuffing it down and then projecting it out to everybody else and making it seem like they're the problem. Like, the problem was me.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you're doing this work and helping tons of women out there. So
yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to dive into this, and I hope, all the women listening, it helps, and even the men listening can share it with their lady friends.